Good morning, everybody, and I would first like to echo my congratulations for the passing of the Wellbeing of the Future Generations Act. I think everybody has said how remarkable it is, and I think the message it's sending to the rest of the world is that it can be done. That's a tremendous, tremendous positive message, and I hope that you will do more to carry it out. You know, the bit that I've been with you the last 2 days has shown me that you've covered some tremendous ground, and I definitely do not want to in any way repeat all of that that you've been discussing and talking. But I thought that I would focus on 3 key messages in terms of the way forward. One is that no matter who we are, whether we are ombudspersons, commissioners, advocates, civil servants like myself, we need information that is timely, that it is as precise as possible about future trends or current trends, and given scientific uncertainty, it is a key issue for us all to be deliberating upon. And I'll come back to that a little bit with some more slides. Second of all, that we need clarity of purpose, and I would put to you that the SDGs are able to provide that clarity of purpose for us. And the third point is that we also need the enabling environment, including the governance, the good governance necessary. And I'd like to just point out a few global initiatives that you may wish to keep an eye out on. So if you're expecting, I must also warn you that there are absolutely no words on my slides, well, a few of them. So you will not be able to read along with me. You are forced to listen to what I'm saying. So on the first one, let me bring to you some of the latest findings that we in UNEP have been pulling together in terms of some trends in the future. Some of them you may know of, some of them you may not have been completely aware of. We know, of course, that we're consuming resources today at a rate higher than we are replenishing or restoring it. And therefore, we are consuming at the expense of a future legacy. WWF, thank you, the Living Planet Index, is telling us that this degradation is not uniform. It is affecting the tropics much more than the temperate zones. What does that mean? That means that our global footprint is something that we need to be also keeping definitely an eye out on, and the inequality that that generates. We're finding that the world is using today more sand and gravel than nature is producing. That is a tremendous finding. Where is that coming from? Construction industry, of course. Buildings and roads. In fact, there is an annual 4% increase in cement production that is happening globally. And you may also know that the production of cement also is accompanied by contamination from heavy metals. So while we all might have thought that this is an innocuous thing, after all, dirt is all around us, no, we're even running out of dirt. Another example, which is to me extremely worrying, are the rare earth minerals. At least those that can be extracted at current economically viable costs. We are using these at very, very high rates. Some of these minerals are there on the slide for you. And what's more worrying is that some of these that are becoming rare are the ones that we have been using for good things like renewable energy. So in fact, our capability to produce renewable energy, which we see as a solution to many of our problems, is going to be curtailed if we do not find alternatives for them. And then, of course, having heard a lot about farms, I really must show this slide to you, that our consumption of eggs and meat globally has just been skyrocketing exponentially. A lot of this in the last 3 decades, according to FAO estimates. And we conclude that most of this is as a result of a growing middle class around the world. So it's good. We're all getting better and consuming, better diets, presumably. But it has fueled a greater intensification of the livestock industry, resulting in many negative costs, such as nutrient and pesticide accumulation, antibiotic resistance, zoonosis. You all remember the mad cow disease? That was last decade. When was it? So while we might be consuming more livestock products, it's actually at the expense of the environment, and some would say at the expense of our own health, because of the way these livestock products are in fact coming to our table. They're also resulting in they're driving traditional producers, pastoralists in Africa, or extensive producers, ranchers, perhaps even here in Wales, out of business, because the price of relatively organic or sustainable food is a lot higher than the intensively produced systems. Why? Because the intensive produced systems actually don't internalize the costs, the negative externalities that they have on the environment. So those negative costs are not being factored into the market price for what we see. So there are dysfunctions in this system, and we do need to do something about it, because of course there are some irreversible changes that are looming around the corner. Now here is where scientific uncertainty does come in. We are not sure whether there are something called planetary boundaries. The fact that the Earth might have boundaries is not quite so scientifically proven. Why? Because nature always adapts. The boundaries are what we think will impact us. We will be impacted, not so much nature. So that's why we prefer to use the word safe operating space. Now, but of course there are many out there who believe that we can reverse these trends very easily through geoengineering, and you probably have seen some of the innovative ideas out there on cloud seeding and doing all sorts of things. And the watchdog, geoengineering.org, you may wish to visit their website from time to time, are keeping an eye out on some of these ideas and the unintended consequences that might come from technological fixes to our problem. So my question to you is, will future generations have to abandon the precautionary principle? Because they will no longer have the luxury of thinking long term, due to the many crises that they will have to face at the same time. And that brings me to a third key point here about our impacts today. And thank you, Simon, you basically touched upon the fact that the decisions we take today essentially limit the decisions, the choices that the future can take. A coal-powered power plant, 30 to 50 years. That impact will last 30 to 50 years. And therefore, huge consequences as to what's going on. A final example of recent estimates, air quality is now the second highest cause of premature death after cardiovascular diseases globally. Air quality. For those of us who were around 50 years ago and 60, 70 years ago, you will recall that air pollution was one of the biggest campaigns in those days. And in fact, in developed countries, yes, we did a tremendous effort to reduce air pollution, and it has worked, but it is coming back. Right now, black carbon is one of the biggest increases in the air pollution. And on top of that, what we do with our waste is becoming an increasing problem. We don't have another planet to throw it out into. It's here and now. We know, for example, that anybody will have 66% chance of getting asthma if you are living near noxious land uses. So, WHO estimates that by 2025 we will live on average to be 73 years. I really want to that is the case, because of what we are doing to the environment and the impact that has on our own. So that was just a little sampler to give you a sense of where some of this information is coming from. I'd like to ask you to go to UNEP Live. UNEP Live is a portal, is an online free portal, no passwords, thank goodness. Just go in and you can obtain any kind of information, including real time. For example, we get real-time data coming on sea level rise. So if you wanted to monitor sea level rise right here around Cardiff, you could do so through that. The Global Environmental Outlook is generated every 4 years through UNEP. It contains a tremendous amount of information that you can use. The next one is under preparation, and we should have the beginnings of the results by early 2016. We support the state of environment reporting of many, many countries. The EU has just come out with theirs, very interesting report. And there is the Global Environmental Alert Service, which UNEP uses once a month. We put out alerts on what are some of the key things that are coming out. So for example, that sand and gravel example I gave you is from the Global Environmental Alert Service. So it's clear that we will continue to monitor environment. This is our job as UNEP, but it's also clear that we need to invest in long-term research. And while we talk about making long-term decisions, it's really only possible with long-term information and accurate, as precise and timely information as possible. So what I'd like to hear back from you, perhaps if the chair allows, is to get a sense of what type of data and analysis would help you the most. What can we, as an international public entity, provide to you that would be of use? And how can we package that information best to suit your needs? So we'd love to hear from you about that. Now let me change tack and very quickly go to the purpose and to add my voice to Nikhil's and Farouk's and others to say that we do have a very comprehensive package of goals. They are not necessarily all the issues in the world. In fact, they're not. You might think so. 169 targets is quite a lot. But actually, there's a lot more issues out there. But they are the, shall I say, the top most urgent priorities in the social, the economic, and the environmental dimensions of sustainability. We also feel that it captures at least 3 principles that, and the third one is truly very relevant, I think, to our discussions. One is leave no one behind. That is sprinkled through the entire structure. And the leave no one behind, I will put to you, should be done in a way that is environmentally and socially sound. The second is that we should continue to progress. We need prosperity. We all would like to feel more well. Sorry, that wasn't very good English. But we cannot do so at the expense of the environment. Therefore, the notion of decoupling has already been mentioned. But the third is that, to think of it that already this pie that we're all sort of trying to get a piece of, meaning this world, is shrinking. The pie is already shrinking. We have degradation of our resources is happening every day. And yet we need more resources to bring people out of poverty. We need more resources to prosper, right? So really, truly, the only way we can manage all, the only way we can have our cake and eat it too, is to invest, is to consciously invest in future capital. And this is where I just wanted to give you a few examples of what these might be. So we need to invest in social capital. Okay? And yesterday someone mentioned this, and it's really important that we reiterate this. We need access to environmental justice for everybody, We need protection of cultural heritage and traditional knowledge. We need universal access to information. There are many in this world that actually don't have information. We need security and predictability of ownership of land, of natural resources, and so on. This might not be such a big problem here in the north, but in many parts of the world, that security is not there. And we need education for sustainable development, including citizen science, a very interesting phenomenon that's rising. And I'd really love to hear also from your perspectives, how effective can citizen science be in terms of raising awareness and at the same time providing information. We also need the investments in economic capital. Already this morning someone talked about going beyond GDP. UNEP's latest report in December 2014 of the Inclusive Wealth Index shows that, in fact, while we think GDP is finally back on its feet and it's growing, and we've got countries going at 7%, 8%, some of them even higher, China being 12% a few years ago. In fact, if you measure it by the Inclusive Wealth Index, which adds human capital and natural capital to the economic capitals of GDP, you will find that very few countries, in fact, have gone beyond just 1% growth. Most countries are in -1, meaning they're not growing at all. So what do we do? How can we redress this? Well, many ways, many different ways. There are principles of inclusive green economy. There are principles of sustainable consumption production, which I think at a later time, or if you wish, I can lead you to other places to look at that. But I'd like to focus on just on three aspects. One is the increasing phenomena of robotization. There are increasing signs that in many countries, robotization, particularly in developing countries, is accompanying industrialization of these countries. But as a result, the actual net increase in employment is falling, which stands to reason. A robot is doing the work of 10, 15, 20 people. Is this what we want? Is this the trajectory that we will have increasing unemployment of countries in developing countries? Of course, that's their decision to take, but they need to understand the impacts of robotization and what that does. On the other hand, the more we invest in green jobs and green technologies, we find that actually we're increasing employment. So while the net is falling, in different sectors we are seeing an increase in employment capability, and a lot of focus these days is on nature-based employment. Why? Because one of the accompanying phenomena is the loss of rural jobs. So rural jobs get lost, people migrate into cities, they expand the slums, etc. And the cities, of course, can't take care of all these people. So what am I pointing out to you? That our choices of industrialization, our choices and pathways towards economic growth is clearly something that needs to be looked at, not only from an economic growth perspective, but also the social impacts of that on employment. Another one I'd like to, oops, that's the wrong button. Another issue I'd like to bring to your attention, which I think is, I don't really need to belabor too long because everybody's been talking about long-term views and long-term thinking. But let's take that also to our infrastructure. Today, in many parts of the world, you build a road and within two years you have to repave it. And all the resources that's necessary to go into that. Can we start encouraging industry and those who are technology providers to be thinking long-lasting? Can we start a debate, yet again, which was quite strong in the 70s and 80s, I believe, in different parts of the world, of planned obsolescence and the throwaway economy? Can we bring that debate back again? Because we are still in a throwaway economy. We are still not looking beyond that stuff. And then I wanted to report to you that UNEP, with a coalition of central bankers and a few other key stakeholders, we are conducting a study on the sustainability of the financial system, the global financial system. We hope the results of this will be coming out soon, but essentially this report is looking at what are some of the dysfunctions in the current global financial system that is hindering investment in sustainability and sustainable growth. And then finally, the third area, capital, of course, is natural capital. With 30% of our ecosystems, with 30% of ecosystem services degraded, and this was back in 2005, the data that came from the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment. Clearly we have a lot to do to clean up this planet. And why have we not done it so far? Because everybody says it costs too much. Restoration costs a lot of money. Well, actually, biological restoration doesn't cost as much as mechanical restoration, first of all. And second of all, restoration creates jobs. Plenty of jobs. So why are we afraid? Well, this is a question to policymakers and to governments. But clearly we need the right incentives for investors to go in and restore our natural capital. The Wales Tidal Lagoon Initiative. Congratulations, indeed, a very excellent example of restoration, which I hope we can disseminate across the world. And you may be aware that there is the Bond Challenge that was recently approved. The Bond Challenge, many member countries, member states have approved it, is to restore 150 million hectares of forests by 2020. So indeed, Peter, if we can plant 1 tree for every child that's born, I think we will achieve this tenfold. Hopefully, I don't know, I'll have to calculate that and see. So, but let us also invest in governance, enabling frameworks. And again, I'm just giving you a little snapshot of a few initiatives that are out there. Sustainable consumption production, not only is it in the SDGs, but it is actually a long-running program that finally in Rio +20 got sort of a shot in the arm. And there the countries agreed on a 10-year framework program on sustainable consumption production, which covers everything from sustainable public procurement to ecotourism to sustainable agriculture, sustainable consumption and lifestyles. A huge program with amazing array of initiatives and partnerships, and I would encourage you please to look at that as well. But one thing that we haven't heard, at least I haven't heard yesterday and today very much, is what do we do about the private sector? As we know, according to some estimates, 75% of the resources we need to actually achieve the Sustainable Development Goals will have to come from the private sector. And this is not just large, this is also small and medium enterprises. How can we encourage them to be part of this journey? Already many are. Many large corporations, I think we're up to close to 126 by now, but I'll have to check that one. And then 100 or so corporations, large corporations, have signed on to the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Initiative. And as what somebody mentioned, I think it was you, Simon, reporting and self-reporting is a very, very important means of talking to your stockholders. And there is an increasing interest on socially responsible bonds in many markets. So I think we're slowly getting to this realization that the private sector can and must do its work. And finally, our governments, perhaps we need to be much more practical and much more visible about the do no harm approach, basically a safeguards approach. Yesterday, you talked about how, I think it was the case of Israel, where the the office was basically shut down because the commissioner, the commissioner was in a position to block things when they came into Parliament. Well, a safeguards approach actually works even further upstream. If a Parliament can agree on a checklist of safeguards that are to be applied, then it becomes a self-correcting process. It doesn't then require somebody at the end with a cleaver to chop something off. So combining a do no harm approach with a do good approach, all investing in the social, natural, and economic capital, clearly is something that we feel would work. And finally, in conclusion, let me do say that yes, we are at a crossroads. I believe this picture was from Rio Plus 20. I need to check that one. Anybody remember this?
It was.
Yes, it was, wasn't it? We are clearly at a crossroads. If we allow the business as usual to continue, then we have no choice but to talk about the current generation sacrificing itself for the future generation. And nobody wants to talk about that. But then that's tied to the business as usual. If we truly embrace sustainability and sustainable development and all these very, very important goals and ideals that we've been talking about, I think that we will have many more instances of win-win synergies and benefits between what we can achieve today and what the future will also be able to achieve. So I hope that I've been convincing enough to you. But again, I'd like to finish off with just a few thoughts about what are some of the concrete things that your group and the network can do. I mentioned safeguards. Perhaps that's something that the group can think about. What would it mean to have safeguards additional to what many countries already have in terms of our impacts and social impacts and so on? What would these safeguards look like if we were looking to a future generation? Perhaps yesterday, I think, Julie, you talked about Canada doing strategic environmental assessments, impact assessments. Maybe we can work on some kind of a common methodology for doing those assessments. I could see this body, this group, being very effective in doing that. And of course, your work on indicators. Please, 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 I'm so excited about what you did yesterday. I think Nikhil talked about it today. Any ideas on how best we can create indicators and use them, whether at the global level or at the national level, is really timely now, and we need to get it out. And finally, I'd like to bring to your attention that the United Nations Environment Assembly, which is a totally new body, it was created after Rio Plus 20, is the first body that, the UN body that's dedicated to the environment. It met for the first time last year. It meets every 2 years. And I think that you could consider how some of the examples and lessons and efforts that you have been undertaking here can be highlighted even more strongly at the next United Nations Environment Assembly, which will be in May of 2016. So I tried to be very concrete at the end, just to give you some thoughts as to how we could, have some activities, and thank you very much.